Everybody, welcome to What's Up Wednesday. This week, I want to touch on a topic that I kind of feel thankful we haven't talked about this topic for a while, but infection control. Obviously, everybody went through a nightmare from 2020 through 2022 with COVID, and COVID-19 really woke us up to the idea of infection control in a very large scale. And, as we look at that, right now, we're seeing a lot of scary news around hantavirus and Ebola and some of these other viruses that tend to be much more severe than something like COVID-19. And I know I've had quite a few questions about what if, right? What if it happens? What if it spreads here? And I know that both Hanta and with Ebola, they tend to have a fairly significant mortality rate, meaning they tend to kill their host fairly quickly, which ends up kind of eradicating the spread of the virus. I believe that the death rate from Hanta is 30%. I think Ebola is a little bit more than that. But what if a major infectious disease virus, such as one of these, really ran rampant the way that COVID-19 did? And I don't think we have the answers to that. But when you think about infection control, I think there are kind of two categories. One would be expected exposures, and another would be kind of uncontrolled exposures, such as virus outbreaks, epidemics, pandemics, and things like that. And I know that we've all gone through and we have quite a bit of experience around those epidemic, pandemic type situations now, having lived through COVID. But let's revisit an expected exposure that we have to deal with, which is bloodborne pathogens. And I think this is one of those topics that I believe in the safety profession, we might almost refer to it as an annoyance, because bloodborne pathogen training is required by OSHA both initially and on an annual refresher type of a basis. And I know it's one of those trainings like HASCOM where every year we got to find a way to retrain on this topic that people don't want to talk about. They don't want to hear about. They don't want to sit down and go through training over and over again on bloodborne pathogens. But the reality is when we have exposures, and these often occur with cuts, nicks, different types of incidents and accidents, even vomit and other types of bodily fluids or functions. What I tend to notice or have noticed over the years, and what I hear from people is we train them, we tell them to avoid exposure, we give them the equipment, we give them gloves, we give them disposable masks, we give them whatever PPE and equipment they need to prevent exposure. But the first thing you see somebody doing when somebody's bleeding is they jump in and they try to help them without any sense of protection. And there are a lot of different things to be concerned with, a lot of bloodborne pathogens, such as the different strains of hepatitis. AIDS, HIV was a big issue for many years that we don't hear as much about, but it's one of those topics that, as much as it is an annoyance, it's something that we have to constantly educate our people on. And that means we have to have a robust bloodborne pathogen exposure program. We need to provide initial training when an employee starts, and we need to provide annual refresher training. I know one really easy way to do that now, because I think that there are two or three different means of training that in the profession that we're kind of utilizing now. One would be obviously in-person training, being in front of a group of people, providing a PowerPoint or some other toolbox talk, whatever it might be, where we're presenting in person. Another would be potentially some kind of a virtual session or a webinar. And the third would be some kind of a learning management system, LMS. And the easiest way to do this is to assign an LMS bloodborne pathogen course that usually they last maybe 20 minutes. And for those out there who don't realize it, if you look at either your insurance carriers for your business insurance lines or workers' comp insurance, or the broker you work with to get those policies, chances are pretty good that they have a learning management system that they subscribe to that is free to you to use as one of their clients, as one of their insured. So think about that. If you haven't looked into the options provided by your insurance broker and your insurance carriers, do so. because there's some really effective and easy to utilize and access and assign training that's available to you to cover topics like bloodborne pathogens, HAZCOM, and other types of training that's required on an annual basis to refresh people. So hopefully you find that helpful. Let's hope we don't have another epidemic or pandemic outbreak of another virus. But, in the meantime, let's focus on those expected exposures and make sure that we're updating our training as we're required annually and we're touching on bloodborne pathogens. Hopefully you find that helpful. We'll see you next Wednesday.